The illusion of love. The air was thick with an unsettling tension as Jack stood outside the funeral home, shuffling nervously from foot to foot. It was a stark contrast to the lively atmosphere he usually reveled in. Today, somber black attire and whispered condolences filled the space where laughter used to ring. Rachel's father, the formidable Mr. Monroe, had passed away suddenly, leaving a void that echoed through the lives of everyone who knew him. But for Jack, it was an opportunity, a golden ticket disguised as mourning. Jack had always been an opportunist, thriving on the wealth and affections of the women he charmed. He met Rachel 3 years ago, captivated not only by her beauty, but also by the wealth that flowed in her family. Mr. Monroe had built a business empire, and with Rachel being the sole heir, Jack saw his chance for a life of luxury. He never would have entertained the idea of marrying her if it weren't for her substantial inheritance. In his mind, Rachel was simply the bridge to a more affluent lifestyle. However, as the days turned into months and the wedding day approached, something shifted within him. In her sorrow, Rachel had become more vulnerable, and Jack found himself entwined in a web of emotions he hadn't anticipated. As he offered her consolation, Jack felt an unexpected tug at his heart, a flicker of genuine care, or perhaps it was merely a reflection of his own self-interest. He spent hours comforting her, whispering sweet nothings while mentally counting the days until he could secure his access to her wealth. Rachel was enveloped in grief. The funeral had brought the reality of her father's death crashing down like a heavy fog. Mr. Monroe had been her guiding light, a steadfast figure in her life. To lose him so abruptly left her reeling. But Jack was there, playing the role of the dutiful partner. He organized everything, from the flowers to the arrangements, ensuring that he presented himself as her rock. To the world, they were a grieving couple, but behind closed doors, Jack was merely calculating his next move. Jack's mind was a whirlwind of strategies, and as he walked beside Rachel to the notary's office after the funeral, he pondered the implications of her inheritance. The notary represented both a culmination of his efforts and the beginning of his challenges. Rachel would soon be the wealthiest widow in town, and Jack intended to position himself as the rightful beneficiary of her fortune. "Are you ready for this?" Jack asked, feigning concern as they approached the heavy oak doors of the notary's office. Rachel turned to him, her eyes a pool of sadness and confusion. "I have to do this," she replied softly. "I need to know what my father left for me." As they entered, the austere atmosphere of the notary's office weighed heavily on both of them. The walls were lined with books and certificates, a testament to the seriousness of the proceedings. Jack felt a flicker of anxiety. Would Mr. Langford, Rachel's father's best friend and godfather, be there? He had always viewed Jack with suspicion, sensing that Jack's motives weren't entirely pure. The notary, an elderly man with spectacles perched precariously on the tip of his nose, greeted them with a somber nod. "Miss Monroe, Mr. Wright," he said, gesturing for them to sit. "I extend my condolences on your loss. Your father's estate is a complex matter, and will need to go through everything to ensure a smooth transition." Jack sat beside Rachel, watching her closely. As the notary began to lay out the documents, Jack's thoughts spiraled. He had been preparing for this moment since Rachel had first told him about her father's illness. The will would outline everything: assets, properties, and investments, and Jack was determined to ensure that he received his fair share. "Your father's estate is considerable, Miss Monroe," the notary began, shifting through the papers. "He left behind several properties, investments, and his business, which is currently flourishing. However, there are specific conditions attached to the inheritance." Rachel's brow furrowed as she listened, her fingers fidgeting nervously with the hem of her dress. Jack's heart raced as the notary continued, outlining various assets and their values. He could feel the weight of Rachel's inheritance pressing down on him. "Your father made it clear in his will that he wanted you to be protected. This includes a prenuptial agreement if you were to marry," the notary said, glancing between Jack and Rachel. "It's a standard practice, but I must emphasize its importance given the nature of the estate. Jack's pulse quickened. He had anticipated this moment, but hearing it stated so plainly sent a chill through him. He had planned to tap into Rachel's wealth without restrictions, and now he faced a potential obstacle. Rachel seemed taken aback, her eyes wide as she processed the implications. "Prenuptial?" she echoed, her voice a mixture of confusion and concern. "Is that really necessary? I thought we were in this together." "Darling, it's just a formality," Jack interjected, forcing a smile. "We love each other, right? This is just a precaution to protect both of us. Your godfather wants to make sure you're safe." He hoped to mask his own anxiety with a facade of confidence. Mr. Langford's looming presence had always nagged at Jack. A keen businessman in his own right, Langford was both a protector of Rachel and a potential adversary to Jack's plans. He had seen through Jack's charm long before Rachel had. Jack needed to tread carefully. Any misstep could jeopardize his carefully laid plans. "It's for your own good, Rachel," Jack continued, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. "It'll protect us both. I would never dream of taking your money." Rachel hesitated, her mind racing. "But I don't need a contract to prove my love for you. If we're committed, why does it matter?" Her voice was tinged with vulnerability, and Jack's heart sank. He needed to convince her that this was about their future, not just about the money. "Sweetheart," Jack soothed, squeezing her shoulder gently. "It's just a precaution. Mr. Langford only wants what's best for you. I promise I'll take care of you, and we'll get through this together." The notary observed the exchange quietly, his expression inscrutable. He shuffled through the papers, his pen poised to take notes. "It's a standard procedure, Miss Monroe," he reiterated. "I advise you to consider it seriously. Your father wanted to ensure that his legacy would be secure." Jack caught Rachel's eye, praying she would see reason. After a tense moment, she nodded slowly, though the uncertainty lingered in her gaze. "Okay, if it's what my father wanted," she relented, her voice barely above a whisper. Jack exhaled a silent sigh of relief. The first obstacle had been navigated, albeit with more effort than he anticipated. He leaned back in his chair, feigning confidence, while inside, he was a tumult of emotions. He had convinced her, but now he had to ensure that the terms of the prenuptial agreement worked in his favor. As the notary continued outlining the details, Jack felt a renewed sense of purpose. The marriage was no longer just about wealth. It was about controlling Rachel's life and decisions. He envisioned a future where he could siphon off her fortune, living lavishly while ensuring that he maintained an illusion of partnership. Days turned into weeks, and amidst the grief and the funeral arrangements, the wedding plans began to materialize. Jack was quick to assume the role of the loving fiancé, reassuring Rachel that everything would be all right. She was still in the throes of mourning, seeking comfort in his presence. Little did she know that each moment spent together was meticulously orchestrated by Jack to solidify his position in her life. The wedding took place in a quaint little chapel, a stark contrast to the opulence of her father's estate. Rachel, in her pristine white gown, looked ethereal, yet there was a shadow over her countenance, a lingering grief that Jack had become adept at ignoring. The ceremony was brief, and Jack seized the moment to emphasize the vows, all the while planning for the life that lay ahead. As the newlyweds exited the chapel, the cheers and applause masked Jack's internal calculations. With each step toward their future, he envisioned the spoils of Rachel's inheritance lining his pockets. The facade of love would carry him forward, even as Rachel remained unaware of the depths of his ambition. In the quiet of their new home, amidst the remnants of their wedding, Jack began to implement his plan. He had access to Rachel's finances, and as she dove into her new role managing her father's business, he observed from the sidelines, ready to pounce at the first sign of vulnerability. Jack had played the part of the devoted husband, but beneath that veneer lay a schemer waiting for the perfect moment to exploit Rachel's grief and naivety. Little did he know that the true test of their union was yet to come: the burden of wealth. As the weeks rolled on, Rachel found herself submerged in the intricate world of her father's business. The empire he had built was a complex tapestry of investments, properties, and ventures that now demanded her full attention. The death of Mr. Monroe had not only left a significant void in her heart, but also placed an enormous weight on her shoulders. Managing the legacy of such a formidable figure felt like an insurmountable task, and every decision she made echoed with the memory of her father. Jack, ever the charming husband, positioned himself as Rachel's confidant and advisor. He would listen patiently as she recounted her day at the office, nodding in all the right places, offering the occasional word of encouragement. But behind the veneer of support, Jack's true intentions simmered beneath the surface. He was not merely a loving husband. He was a strategic planner, meticulously laying out a course that would secure him a substantial share of Rachel's wealth. "Rachel, you're doing an incredible job," he said one evening as they sat on their plush sofa, the glow of the city lights filtering through the window. "I know it's a lot to handle, but your father would be proud of you." Rachel smiled, her eyes shimmering with unused tears. "Thank you, Jack. Some days, I feel like I'm drowning in it all. There's so much to learn, and the pressure to keep everything afloat is overwhelming." Jack reached for her hand, squeezing it reassuringly. "You don't have to do it alone. I'm here for you, and I want to help. Let's work together on this. You focus on the big decisions, and I can handle the smaller ones. Keeping track of finances, managing investments, maybe even helping with meetings." Rachel looked at him, her heart swelling with gratitude. "That would really help, actually. I'd love your input. I just want to make sure I do this right." Inwardly, Jack felt a rush of triumph. This was exactly the foothold he needed. By positioning himself as an indispensable partner in her business, he could ensure that he had access to Rachel's finances without raising suspicion. As she delegated tasks to him, he meticulously sifted through the details, looking for opportunities to siphon funds into his own accounts while keeping Rachel blissfully unaware. Days turned into weeks, and the weight of responsibility slowly transformed Rachel. The innocent, naive woman who had once been captivated by Jack's charm began to exhibit a more assertive demeanor as she navigated the complexities of business. Meetings with executives, negotiations with partners, and strategic planning sessions became a part of her daily routine. She grew into her role, gaining confidence with every passing day. Yet Jack remained the ever-watchful observer, his mind a hive of calculations. However, Rachel's transformation did not go unnoticed. Mr. Langford, her father's best friend and trusted advisor, kept a close eye on her progress. He was not entirely convinced that Jack was the right man for Rachel, especially given the enormous wealth at stake. Langford often attended meetings, casting a watchful gaze over Jack's involvement, subtly probing Rachel about her husband's contributions. "Rachel, I'm glad to see you stepping up," Langford said one afternoon after a particularly challenging meeting with a group of investors. "But I must remind you to be cautious. Not everyone in this world has your best interests at heart. I've seen opportunists come and go, and I'd hate to see you get hurt." Rachel appreciated Langford's concern but brushed it aside. "I know, Mr. Langford, but I trust Jack. He's been nothing but supportive, and I need him to help me manage everything. I can't do it alone." Langford frowned slightly but nodded, aware that Rachel was determined to forge her own path. "Just be careful. You're a smart woman, and I have faith in your judgment. Remember, you have a legacy to protect." As the weeks progressed, Jack became more adept at manipulating Rachel's trust. He would suggest investments, advocate for spending decisions, and even take the lead on financial planning. Rachel was grateful for his assistance, and the lines between their personal and professional lives blurred even further. They were, after all, newlyweds navigating the tumultuous waters of grief and responsibility together. But while Rachel flourished in her role, a dark undercurrent of dissatisfaction began to churn within Jack. The longer he played the devoted husband, the more he realized that Rachel was not simply a pawn in his game. She was a formidable opponent in her own right. Her intelligence and determination were gradually making his task more complicated. He had initially thought of her as a passive vessel to fill with his ambitions, but as she grew more confident, he could no longer ignore the reality of her capabilities. The tension began to seep into their home life, though Jack attempted to keep the facade intact. They would share dinners and moments of laughter, yet Jack would catch himself watching her with an uncharacteristic scrutiny. He was no longer just a husband. He was a predator keeping an eye on his prey. He wanted to maintain his access to her wealth, but the growing divide between them left him feeling uneasy. One evening, Rachel returned home later than usual, her face flushed with excitement. She had just secured a significant partnership for her father's business, a deal that could expand its reach into new markets. Jack feigned happiness, but inside, he seethed. "Rachel, that's incredible news," he exclaimed, trying to sound genuinely pleased. "You've really outdone yourself." "Thank you, Jack. It was a tough negotiation, but I think it's going to be worth it," she replied, her enthusiasm infectious. "I can't wait to see how this impacts the business." Jack forced a smile, but his mind raced. The more successful Rachel became, the more challenging it would be to maintain control over her finances. He needed a plan, a way to ensure that he could continue to siphon funds without arousing suspicion. As Rachel reveled in her triumph, Jack's thoughts turned darker. He could see a future where she would no longer rely on him, where her confidence would overshadow his contributions. That was unacceptable. He had to find a way to reinforce his position as her partner while secretly undermining her autonomy. In the following weeks, Jack began to devise a strategy. He started by planting seeds of doubt. "You know, Rachel, while you're doing great things with the business, there are a lot of people who would love to see you fail," he said one evening as they sat on the patio, sipping wine under the stars. "You need to be careful who you trust. I can't help but worry about some of your advisors. They might not have your best interests at heart." Rachel looked at him, surprised. "But they've been with my father for years. They know the business inside and out." "Yes, but that doesn't mean they care about you as a person. Just keep that in mind," Jack said, feigning concern. He knew that by planting these doubts, he could create a rift between Rachel and her support system, further isolating her and solidifying his position in her life. Despite his efforts, Rachel remained steadfast in her trust. She believed in the people her father had surrounded himself with, and Jack's words only slightly penetrated her resolve. Frustrated, Jack felt a swell of anger. He was losing control, and he couldn't afford to let that happen. Then, a month later, a shocking development occurred. Rachel's health began to deteriorate. At first, it was just minor fatigue, something she attributed to the stress of her new role. But as days turned into weeks, she became increasingly exhausted. Jack feigned concern, but deep down, a part of him relished the prospect of her weakness. "Rachel, you need to take a break," he urged, his voice dripping with false sincerity. "You're pushing yourself too hard. It's not worth sacrificing your health for the business." She brushed off his comments, her determination unyielding. "I can't, Jack. I have to keep everything running smoothly. My father worked so hard for this. I owe it to him." Jack watched as her stubbornness led to late nights at the office and skipped meals. He had hoped that her declining health would prompt her to lean on him more, yet she remained fiercely independent. As she lost weight and grew paler, Jack's facade of concern began to wear thin. "Rachel, please see a doctor," he urged one evening, growing impatient. "You can't keep going like this." "I'm fine," she snapped, her frustration boiling over. "I just need to get through this busy period. I'll take care of myself after. Can't you understand that?" The confrontation marked a turning point in their relationship. For the first time, Jack sensed the vulnerability in Rachel's voice, a crack in the armor she had built around herself. He had underestimated her strength, but now, seeing her falter, he felt an overwhelming urge to exploit her weakness. With each passing day, Rachel's health continued to decline. Jack seized the opportunity, increasing his influence over her decisions. He positioned himself as her primary caregiver, insisting that she delegate more tasks to him and take time off for her health. But behind the scenes, he was simply tightening his grip, ensuring that he was the only one she turned to for support. As Rachel became more isolated from her advisors, Jack moved into the role of the protector, manipulating her perceptions of those around her. "I think you need to get rid of some of the people you've been working with," he suggested casually one evening. "They're not doing anything for you. You need to surround yourself with those who truly care." Rachel hesitated, caught in a web of confusion and fatigue. "But they've been loyal to my father for years. I don't know if I can just cut them off." Jack leaned closer, his voice low and convincing. "You need people who put you first, Rachel. You have to look out for yourself, and I want to help you. Trust me." Slowly, Rachel began to pull away from her advisors. Jack's manipulation had taken root, and with each step, he felt more confident in his plan. The path to Rachel's fortune was becoming clearer, but with each passing day, he felt the heaviness of guilt tugging at him. The deeper he delved into her world, the more he realized that he was losing sight of the lines between love and greed. Despite the thrill of his deception, Jack was haunted by fleeting moments of clarity. In the quiet of the night, when Rachel's breathing grew shallow and her body curled into itself, he would watch her sleep, wrestling with the realization that he was responsible for her suffering. Each time he looked at her pale face, guilt gnawed at his conscience. She was no longer just a means to an end. She was a woman with dreams, aspirations, and a future. But the siren call of wealth was intoxicating. Jack had already come too far to turn back, and the prospect of a life filled with luxury kept him tethered to his deceptive path. He could almost taste the success that lay ahead, a life of comfort, freedom, and power. As the weeks dragged on, Rachel's health continued to spiral downward. Jack remained at her side, ever the attentive husband, but his concern was a mask for his growing desperation. He needed to act before her condition became a permanent roadblock to his ambitions. He had to ensure that he secured his stake in her father's empire before she recovered and regained control. Finally, in a moment of cold clarity, Jack devised a plan. He would orchestrate a financial crisis that would leave Rachel vulnerable, forcing her to rely on him completely. He had already begun to manipulate financial records, siphoning off small amounts from the company, and creating the illusion of a larger problem. "Rachel," he said one evening, feigning concern as they reviewed the financials together, "I think we need to talk about the numbers. I've noticed some discrepancies that we should address before they escalate." "What do you mean?" she asked, her brow furrowed as she studied the documents in front of her. "What discrepancies?" Jack pointed to the figures on the page, painting a picture of impending doom. "There are losses here that we can't ignore. If we don't address this now, it could mean serious trouble for the business. I'm afraid we might need to cut back on expenses, maybe even let some people go." Rachel's face drained of color. "But we just made a major partnership. That doesn't make sense. Partnerships take time to yield results, and we can't rely on them alone. We need to be proactive." Jack's voice dripped with urgency, and he leaned closer, his expression grave. "I know you're stressed, and it's not easy to see, but I'm here for you. We'll figure this out together." Rachel nodded slowly, her eyes filled with uncertainty. "Okay, if you think it's necessary, I'll trust your judgment." Her voice wavered, and Jack felt a rush of triumph surge through him. The first phase of his plan was falling into place. The coming weeks were filled with tension as Jack began to enact his scheme. He orchestrated layoffs, cutbacks, and financial maneuvers that would keep Rachel dependent on his expertise. The more chaos he introduced, the more Rachel turned to him for guidance, slowly unwinding the threads of her independence. As the business crumbled around her, Rachel's health faltered further. She was a shadow of her former self, consumed by anxiety and fatigue. Jack knew he had to tread carefully. If he pushed too hard, she might realize the truth. "Jack, I don't know if I can handle this anymore," she confessed one evening, her voice trembling. "Everything feels like it's collapsing, and I'm just so tired." Jack felt a pang of guilt, but he quickly masked it with false concern. "You're stronger than you realize, Rachel. We're in this together, remember? I won't let you down. We'll get through this." In that moment, Jack felt a conflict raging within him. He wanted to provide her with the support she craved, but it was impossible to ignore the twisted satisfaction he felt in controlling her destiny. The very woman he had once admired now lay vulnerable, and he was the architect of her despair. As Rachel continued to lean on Jack, the final piece of his plan fell into place. He would propose a bold merger that would ostensibly save the company, but in reality, it would allow him to seize control of her fortune and strip Rachel of her autonomy. He had meticulously crafted the proposal, ensuring that it would appear as a rescue operation, a lifeline that would solidify his role as her savior. But even as he moved forward, doubt began to creep into his mind. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was losing himself in the process. What had begun as a simple ploy for wealth had evolved into a complex game of manipulation and control. Each step he took further away from Rachel felt like a betrayal of the love he had initially felt. Still, Jack pressed on, determined to execute his plan flawlessly. He knew that if he hesitated now, the consequences could be dire. In his mind, he justified his actions as necessary, but deep down, a flicker of remorse began to take root. In the days leading up to the merger proposal, Rachel's health hit a critical low. Jack watched her grow weaker, her energy sapped from the constant stress. Yet she continued to work tirelessly, her determination unwavering, even as her body began to fail her. Finally, the day arrived for Jack to present his proposal. He had arranged a meeting with key stakeholders, a carefully curated group that would lend credence to his plan. As Rachel entered the boardroom, pale and trembling, Jack felt a mix of triumph and unease. She was a mere puppet in his game, and he was pulling the strings. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice steady as he laid out the vision for the merger. Rachel sat beside him, looking frail and exhausted, but Jack was determined to push through. "This merger will not only save the company but will allow us to expand into new markets." He could see Rachel's eyes flicker with interest, her trust in him still intact, even as doubt lingered beneath the surface. She leaned in, her voice barely above a whisper. "Are you sure this is the best way to go about this, Jack?" "Absolutely," he replied, injecting confidence into his tone. "This is a crucial moment for us, Rachel. We have to take bold steps to ensure our future." As he spoke, Jack's mind raced. He could feel the walls closing in on him. With each passing minute, the weight of his deception bore down, and he realized the true cost of his ambitions. But he was in too deep to turn back now. The meeting concluded with a sense of agreement among the stakeholders, and as they left, Rachel looked at Jack, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you for believing in us, Jack. I don't know what I would do without you." In that moment, a wave of guilt crashed over him. He could see the toll his actions had taken on her, and yet he couldn't bring himself to confess the truth. Instead, he pulled her into a hug, whispering promises of a bright future, all the while feeling the suffocating weight of his own betrayal. In the days that followed, as they moved forward with the merger, Jack found himself ensnared in a web of conflicting emotions. The allure of wealth and control had once blinded him, but now, as he watched Rachel continue to falter, he couldn't help but feel a sense of loss. What had started as a game had turned into a battle for their souls, and Jack was losing sight of his own. The burden of wealth had become a heavy shackle, and the life he had envisioned was now overshadowed by the consequences of his choices. As Rachel's strength waned, Jack was faced with the reality of his actions, a reality that threatened to unravel everything he had built, leaving him to grapple with the true meaning of love, loyalty, and the cost of ambition. The confrontation. Rachel took a deep breath as she prepared for the pivotal board meeting. The atmosphere in the room was charged with anticipation. The tension felt almost tangible. She had meticulously gathered evidence over the past weeks, documenting Jack's manipulative tactics and clandestine meetings with potential investors. Now it was time to expose him and reclaim her rightful place as the leader of the company. As the board members filed in, Rachel noticed the wary glances exchanged between them. Some looked uncertain, others skeptical, but all were acutely aware of the stakes. Jack entered with his usual swagger, exuding an air of confidence that masked his underlying desperation. He flashed a tight smile at Rachel, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. "Good morning, everyone," Rachel began, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions within her. "I appreciate you all being here today. I've called this meeting to address some serious concerns regarding our leadership structure and recent events that have jeopardized our company's integrity." Jack leaned back in his chair, a smug grin plastered on his face. "What concerns could possibly warrant such drama, Rachel? Surely, we have more pressing matters to discuss than your usual paranoia." Rachel narrowed her eyes, refusing to rise to his bait. "This is not paranoia, Jack. It's a matter of documented evidence." She slid a folder across the table, watching as the board members leaned forward, curiosity piqued. "Over the past few months, I have gathered information that outlines your attempts to undermine my leadership and disrupt the unity of this board." The room fell silent, and Jack's smile faded as the board members flipped through the pages. Rachel took the opportunity to elaborate, her voice gaining strength with each word. "You've held meetings with potential investors without my knowledge, attempting to build a coalition to challenge my position. I have emails, records of meetings, and witness testimonies that prove your intentions." As she spoke, the board members' expressions shifted from curiosity to disbelief, and finally to concern. Whispers began to circulate, punctuated by the sound of paper rustling, as they reviewed the evidence Rachel had presented. Jack's demeanor changed as well. The bravado he had entered with evaporated, replaced by an expression of incredulity. "This is ridiculous," he blurted out, his voice rising. "You're twisting the facts to suit your narrative. Everyone here knows that I have always acted in the best interests of this company. Rachel is just trying to divert attention from her own shortcomings." Rachel's heart raced, but she remained composed. "I am not diverting attention from anything, Jack. You're the one who has jeopardized our company's future with your backdoor dealings. This isn't just about me. It's about the integrity of our entire organization." A board member shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Jack, is there any truth to Rachel's claims? We need transparency, especially in times like these." Jack opened his mouth to respond but seemed to falter, momentarily at a loss for words. Rachel seized the moment, pressing forward. "This is not just about personal grievances. If you're truly invested in the company's future, you should be advocating for open communication and cooperation, not engaging in sabotage." The board members nodded, and Rachel could feel the tide turning in her favor. She continued to detail Jack's manipulations, recounting specific incidents and outlining their implications for the company's direction and morale. As she spoke, the weight of her words sank in, the reality of Jack's actions becoming increasingly undeniable. "Rachel has shown us evidence of her commitment to transparency and collaboration," one board member stated. "We can't ignore the seriousness of these allegations. Jack, your behavior has raised significant concerns, and we cannot allow this to continue." Jack's face flushed with anger. "You're all being manipulated by her. She's trying to frame me as the villain to distract from her incompetence. This is nothing more than a power grab." Rachel, undeterred by his accusations, leaned forward, her gaze locked onto Jack. "If I were trying to grab power, I wouldn't need to resort to tactics like this. My focus has always been on the betterment of the company and its employees. Unlike you, I believe in empowering those around me, not isolating them for personal gain." The board members exchanged glances, their expressions shifting from skepticism to understanding. They could see the passion in Rachel's eyes, her unwavering commitment to the truth. She had emerged as a leader who wasn't afraid to confront the darkness that threatened their organization. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, The board members began to deliberate. Rachel's heart pounded as she waited for their decision, the room heavy with silence. She could sense the gravity of the moment. It wasn't just her future that hung in the balance, but the fate of the entire company. After an agonizing few minutes, one of the senior board members spoke up. "We have reviewed the evidence and have come to a decision. Jack, your actions are unacceptable and detrimental to the company's welfare. We can no longer condone this behavior." Rachel felt a rush of hope as the board members nodded in agreement. The decision was made. Jack's tenure was effectively over, and he was ousted from his position, his name tarnished by the very manipulations he had orchestrated. As the meeting drew to a close, Rachel felt an overwhelming sense of relief wash over her. She had faced her fears head-on and emerged victorious. But she knew this was just the beginning. The battle against manipulation and deceit had been won, but she was acutely aware that Jack would not take his defeat lightly. Stepping out of the boardroom, Rachel was met with applause from her allies. They rallied around her, expressing their support and confidence in her leadership. She had proven herself, not just to them, but to herself as well. But as she walked down the corridor, a nagging thought lingered in her mind. Jack was resourceful and cunning. She had no doubt he would attempt to regain his foothold. The war for her legacy was far from over, and Rachel steeled herself for the challenges that lay ahead. In the weeks that followed, Rachel dove into her work, striving to foster a culture of openness and collaboration. She implemented new policies aimed at enhancing communication within the company, ensuring that every voice was heard and valued. The company thrived under her leadership, growing stronger and more cohesive with each passing day. However, the specter of Jack's influence loomed large. Rachel knew she had to remain vigilant, prepared for any retaliatory strikes he might plan. She fortified her defenses, building alliances and encouraging her team to remain focused and united. Then, one fateful day, Rachel received an anonymous tip that sent chills down her spine. Someone had seen Jack meeting with a rival company, discussing plans to undermine Rachel's leadership and poach key employees. The threat was real, and it was time to act decisively. With her trusted ally at her side, Rachel began to strategize. They would need solid evidence to counteract Jack's moves and protect their team. It was time to confront the shadows that threatened her hard-won legacy, and Rachel was determined to emerge victorious once more. The battle was heating up, but she was ready to fight for the future she believed in. The counteroffensive. The day after receiving the anonymous tip about Jack's clandestine meetings with a rival company, Rachel's resolve crystallized into a fierce determination. The threat he posed was more than just personal. It endangered the legacy her father had built and everything she had fought for since his passing. As she sat in her office, the weight of her responsibilities pressed heavily on her shoulders, but the flicker of hope ignited by her recent victory against Jack fueled her resolve. With her trusted ally, Mia, by her side, Rachel developed a comprehensive strategy to combat Jack's threat. Mia had become an invaluable resource during the past few months, providing insights and support that had helped Rachel navigate the complexities of corporate warfare. They began by gathering intelligence on Jack's new alliances, leveraging their contacts within the industry to uncover details of his meetings and discussions. "Let's focus on getting concrete evidence," Rachel stated, pacing the length of her office. "We need to document his actions, show that he's actively working to undermine us. If we can reveal the depths of his betrayal to the board, we can protect the company and expose him for who he really is." Mia nodded, her eyes shining with determination. "I'll reach out to a few contacts in the investor community and see if they can provide any insight into his discussions. We'll need to be strategic about how we gather this information." Rachel leaned against her desk, contemplating their next steps. "We also need to strengthen our internal unity. The team needs to feel secure in their positions and trust in our leadership. If Jack is trying to create dissent among our ranks, we have to counteract that by promoting transparency and collaboration." Mia smiled, appreciating Rachel's proactive approach. "Let's hold an all-hands meeting. We can share our vision for the future and reiterate our commitment to the company's values. We need everyone to know they have a voice and a role in shaping what's next." With their plan in motion, Rachel began drafting the agenda for the all-hands meeting. She knew it was crucial to engage her team and inspire them to rally behind her leadership. The last thing she wanted was for Jack to sow seeds of doubt, so she prepared a heartfelt message about resilience, unity, and the importance of their mission. As the day of the meeting approached, Rachel's excitement was tempered with apprehension. She wanted to ensure she communicated her vision effectively while also addressing the concerns and fears her team might have. As she stood in front of the mirror, rehearsing her speech, she reminded herself of the strength and courage that had brought her this far. On the day of the all-hands meeting, the atmosphere in the conference room was buzzing with energy and uncertainty. Employees filled the seats, their expressions a mix of curiosity and concern. Rachel could feel the weight of their eyes on her as she stepped up to the podium, the spotlight shining brightly above. "Thank you all for being here today," Rachel began, her voice steady but warm. "I know the past few months have been challenging for all of us, but I want to take this opportunity to reaffirm my commitment to each of you and to this company. Together, we have weathered storms and come out stronger, and I believe that we can do it again." She shared her vision for the future, painting a picture of growth, innovation, and unity. The employees listened intently as she spoke of the values that had guided the company through its most difficult times. Rachel encouraged open dialogue, inviting her team to share their thoughts and concerns. As the discussion unfolded, she was met with a chorus of support and determination. "Rachel, we believe in your leadership," one employee shouted, eliciting applause from others. "We're all in this together." As the meeting progressed, Rachel felt a wave of relief wash over her. The employees rallied behind her, and she could see the fire of commitment ignite in their eyes. They were ready to stand together against any threat, even one as insidious as Jack. After the meeting, Rachel and Mia convened in Rachel's office to discuss their next steps. "That went better than I anticipated," Maya said, her enthusiasm palpable. "The team is ready to fight for what we've built here." "Now we need to act quickly," Rachel replied, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Let's follow up on the intel we're gathering about Jack. If we can expose his connections with the rival company, we can present a united front to the board and ensure they understand the real threat he poses." Mia spent the next few days contacting various industry insiders, piecing together information about Jack's activities. Meanwhile, Rachel intensified her focus on enhancing company morale, organizing team-building activities, and fostering a culture of open communication. She wanted to ensure that everyone felt empowered and connected to the mission. As the tension built around Jack's scheming, Rachel finally received the information she had been waiting for. Mia rushed into Rachel's office, her face flushed with excitement. "I got it. I found out that Jack is in talks with an investor who's been known to poach companies from within our industry. He's been trying to convince them that there's instability here, using his departure to create doubt." Rachel's heart raced. This was the evidence they needed to protect their company and expose Jack for the fraud he was. "Do we have a recording or documentation of these meetings?" she asked eagerly. Mia nodded, presenting a file filled with emails and text messages that detailed Jack's attempts to lure investors. "This is gold. If we present this to the board, it will be clear that Jack is not just trying to take over. He's trying to destroy everything we've built." With this new evidence in hand, Rachel and Mia prepared for another board meeting. They knew the stakes were higher than ever, and they needed to convey the urgency of the situation. Rachel practiced her presentation, ensuring she could articulate the potential consequences of Jack's actions clearly. On the day of the meeting, tension hung in the air as the board members took their seats. Rachel could feel the gravity of the moment, but she steeled herself, remembering the support of her team and the commitment to the legacy her father had built. "Thank you for gathering on such short notice," Rachel began, projecting confidence. "Today, I want to discuss an urgent matter regarding our company's future and the recent actions of our former colleague, Jack. She detailed Jack's manipulations and presented the evidence they had gathered. As she laid out the timeline of his meetings with potential investors, the board members listened intently, their expressions shifting from skepticism to concern. "This is a clear violation of our trust and an attempt to destabilize our company from within," Rachel concluded, her voice steady. "Jack's actions are not just unprofessional. They are a direct threat to our integrity and success." The room erupted into murmurs, board members exchanging concerned glances. Rachel could see the realization dawning on them. The evidence was irrefutable. A senior board member raised a hand to call for order. "Rachel, this is indeed troubling. We must consider the implications of Jack's actions carefully." As discussions unfolded, Rachel felt a surge of hope. The board was taking her concerns seriously, and the evidence had galvanized their resolve to protect the company. They debated the appropriate course of action, weighing the need for transparency against the potential fallout of exposing Jack. Finally, after what felt like hours of deliberation, the board reached a consensus. "We will hold an emergency meeting to address Jack's actions and determine the necessary steps to protect the company," the senior board member announced. "Rachel, thank you for bringing this to our attention. Your leadership during this crisis is commendable." Rachel's heart soared at their decision. She had taken a stand against manipulation and deceit, protecting her team and their shared vision for the future. But she knew that this was just the beginning of a long road ahead. Jack would not take his defeat lightly, and she had to remain vigilant against his next move. As she left the boardroom, Rachel felt a renewed sense of purpose. The battle against Jack's treachery was far from over, but she was ready to fight for what was right. The path ahead would be challenging, but she was determined to protect her legacy and the company her father had built. With her team by her side, she would confront whatever darkness lay ahead and emerge stronger than ever. The reckoning. In the weeks following the emergency board meeting, the atmosphere at the company shifted dramatically. Rachel's decisive actions and the board's support had restored a sense of unity among the employees. They rallied behind her, inspired by her unwavering resolve to confront the threat posed by Jack. However, Rachel knew that the real battle was just beginning. Jack would not go quietly, and the whispers of discontent still lingered among some employees who were wary of the turmoil. Rachel sat in her office, reviewing the latest sales reports and strategizing for the upcoming quarter. Her desk, once adorned with personal mementos from her father, was now covered with documents outlining new initiatives aimed at revitalizing the company's brand and securing its position in the market. She wanted to build on the momentum she had generated, but an unsettling feeling nagged at her, a sense of impending conflict. Mia walked in, breaking Rachel's concentration. "Hey, I've been hearing rumors about Jack. He's reached out to some of our key employees, trying to sway them to his side," she said, her brow furrowed with concern. "We need to address this before it escalates." Rachel straightened in her chair, the realization dawning on her that Jack was trying to orchestrate a coup from the shadows. "How many people has he contacted?" she asked, her heart racing. "From what I gather, a handful of people in the marketing and development departments. He's promising them more freedom and resources if they join him," Maya replied, her voice low. "I think he's planning to leverage their discontent to create a faction." Rachel's jaw clenched. This was precisely the scenario she had feared. Jack was exploiting any weakness he could find, and it was time to take decisive action. "We can't let him chip away at our foundation. We need to strengthen our internal communication and reassure our team about our direction," Rachel said firmly. "Let's set up individual meetings with the key players in those departments. We need to show them that we value their contributions and are committed to their growth." Mia nodded, a determined glint in her eye. "I'll coordinate with the team and set up those meetings. We need to remind them of our vision and how they fit into it." Over the next few days, Rachel met with the employees who had been approached by Jack. Each conversation reinforced her belief in the strength of her leadership. They expressed their gratitude for her openness and commitment, revealing that Jack's promises were more about manipulation than genuine concern for their well-being. Rachel listened intently, providing support and guidance, emphasizing that the company was a collective effort and that every employee's input mattered. As Rachel wrapped up her last meeting of the week, she felt a surge of optimism. She had effectively countered Jack's initial attempts to sway her team, but she knew he would not relent. She decided to strengthen her strategy and rally her loyal supporters. "Let's host a company-wide event," Rachel suggested to Mia as they walked through the office. "Something that reinforces our values and reminds everyone why they joined this team in the first place." "An event could really help solidify our mission," Mia agreed. "How about a state of the company presentation followed by team-building activities? We can invite everyone to share their ideas and feedback, fostering an inclusive environment." With the plan set, Rachel and Mia began organizing the event. They promoted it across the company, encouraging attendance and participation. Rachel prepared a presentation that highlighted the company's achievements, her vision for the future, and a transparent overview of the challenges they faced. She wanted to convey that despite the turmoil, their path was clear and that each person played a crucial role in the company's success. As the event date approached, Rachel felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. The turnout was crucial, and she needed to ensure her message resonated with every employee. On the day of the event, the conference room buzzed with energy as employees filled the seats, their chatter a hopeful backdrop. Rachel stood at the front, her heart racing as she surveyed the crowd. She took a deep breath and stepped up to the microphone. "Thank you all for being here today. It means a lot to me and to this company. We've been through some challenging times recently, but together we have the power to shape our future." She shared her presentation, highlighting the company's achievements, recent innovations, and the steps they were taking to secure their position in the market. As she spoke, she could see the enthusiasm and pride returning to her team. They clapped and cheered, their spirits visibly lifted. Once the presentation concluded, Rachel opened the floor for discussion, inviting employees to share their thoughts and ideas. The room buzzed with excitement as people raised their hands to contribute, brainstorming ways to strengthen their collaboration and improve their work environment. However, amid the camaraderie, Rachel's instincts warned her that Jack would strike back soon. As the event wrapped up, she caught a glimpse of a familiar figure lurking outside the conference room. Jack. He was leaning against the wall, arms crossed, a smirk plastered on his face. Rachel felt a chill run down her spine as their eyes locked. His expression radiated arrogance, a silent promise that this battle was far from over. The next few weeks unfolded in a whirlwind of activity as Rachel continued to promote teamwork and collaboration within the company. She implemented new initiatives, engaged employees in brainstorming sessions, and even launched a mentorship program to nurture new talent. Morale was high, but Jack's presence still loomed ominously. Then came the day that would change everything. Rachel received an urgent message from Mia, her voice frantic over the phone. "Rachel, we need to meet. I just got wind of something big. Jack is planning to announce a new venture that directly competes with ours, and he's recruiting some of our key employees to help him." "Is it true?" Rachel asked, her stomach dropping. "We can't let him do this. He's trying to fracture our company from within. I don't know all the details yet, but I'll dig deeper. We need to prepare for a counter-strategy," Maya said, determination lacing her voice. As Rachel hung up the phone, a sense of urgency washed over her. She understood that this was not just a corporate power struggle. It was a personal battle to protect everything she had worked for, everything her father had built. Within hours, Rachel convened an emergency meeting with her core leadership team. They gathered in the conference room, tension thick in the air as Rachel laid out what she had learned. "Jack is trying to create a rival venture. We need to move quickly to solidify our position and ensure our employees understand the risks involved in aligning with him. Should we launch a public response?" One team member suggested. "We need to show that we're not afraid of his threats." Rachel nodded. "We need to remain proactive. Let's create a transparent communication plan to reassure our team and stakeholders. We can't let fear drive our decisions. As they strategized, Rachel's mind raced with thoughts of how to handle Jack's impending announcement. They needed to protect their employees from being swayed by false promises and misguided loyalty. She envisioned a counter-offensive that would showcase the strength and stability of their current organization. Over the next few days, Rachel and her team worked tirelessly to prepare for Jack's announcement. They crafted press releases that highlighted their achievements, growth potential, and unwavering commitment to their mission. Rachel even scheduled interviews with industry publications, ensuring that their side of the story would be heard loud and clear. Finally, the day arrived when Jack was scheduled to unveil his new venture. Rachel stood in her office, watching the live stream on her computer, her heart racing as she anticipated his every word. Jack stood on stage, exuding confidence as he presented his plans to the audience. Today, I'm excited to announce the launch of a new company that will revolutionize our industry. We're committed to innovation and excellence, and I'm proud to say we have some of the brightest minds from Rachel's company joining us on this journey. As Jack's words echoed through the speakers, Rachel felt a wave of anger and determination wash over her. This was not just a business venture, it was a direct attack on her leadership and the foundation of her father's legacy. But she also felt a spark of resolve ignite within her. As the live stream ended, Rachel gathered her team for an urgent meeting. "This is our moment to respond," she said, her voice steady and determined. "We need to showcase the strength of our organization and remind our employees why they chose to be part of this team. Let's launch our campaign immediately." Over the next week, Rachel executed her plan with precision. They rolled out a multifaceted communication strategy that included social media campaigns, press releases, and direct communication with their employees. The message was clear. They were a stable, innovative company committed to their mission, and they would not be shaken by Jack's attempts to undermine their unity. Simultaneously, Rachel took to social media, sharing her vision and engaging with the community. At Company Name, we believe in innovation and collaboration. Our commitment to our employees and clients is unwavering, and we will continue to lead the way in our industry. We're proud of our achievements and excited for the future. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Employees rallied behind Rachel, expressing their support on social media, sharing stories of their experiences, and affirming their loyalty. The campaign gained momentum, spreading like wildfire, and eclipsing Jack's announcement. Amidst this surge of support, Rachel received an unexpected call from a high-profile industry publication. They wanted to interview her about the recent developments and the company's vision for the future. Seizing the opportunity, Rachel agreed, knowing this would allow her to directly address the situation and assert her leadership. The day of the interview, Rachel stood before the camera, her heart pounding with excitement and anticipation. She spoke passionately about the company's mission, the importance of unity, and the values that had guided them through turbulent times. "We believe in a future built on collaboration and innovation," she stated firmly. "Our strength lies in our people, and we are committed to empowering them to excel. While some may seek to create division, we will stand together, united by our vision and dedication to our work." As the interview aired, Rachel's words resonated with employees and industry leaders alike. They praised her for her transparency, resilience, and unwavering commitment to the company's mission. The public response was a testament to her leadership, and Rachel felt a renewed sense of purpose as she watched the support flood in. Jack, on the other hand, found himself facing backlash for his tactics. The industry began to question his integrity, and as more employees declined his offers, his credibility wavered. Rachel's response had not only safeguarded her company, but had also illuminated Jack's true intentions. In the days that followed, Rachel continued to strengthen her team, focusing on fostering a culture of openness and collaboration. She implemented regular check-ins with her employees, encouraging them to voice their thoughts and concerns. The unity she had built was palpable, and the fear Jack had instilled began to dissipate. But Rachel knew Jack wouldn't give up easily. He would likely devise a new plan to retaliate. With that thought in mind, she remained vigilant, continuously strategizing and preparing for whatever he might throw her way. One evening, as Rachel was wrapping up her day, Mia rushed into her office, her expression a mix of excitement and concern. "Rachel, I just got some intel. Jack is planning to approach some major investors, trying to convince them that he can lead a more innovative company than ours. We need to counter this before it gains traction." Rachel's mind raced as she absorbed the information. "We can't let him tarnish our reputation. Let's arrange a meeting with our key investors and share our recent successes and initiatives. We need to show them that we're a stable and forward-thinking company." The following week, Rachel organized an investor meeting, preparing her team to showcase the company's recent achievements and future potential. They presented their growth strategies, innovation initiatives, and the positive impact of their recent campaigns. The atmosphere during the meeting was charged with enthusiasm as the investors engaged with Rachel and her team. They expressed their confidence in the company and were reassured by Rachel's vision and leadership. The investors reaffirmed their commitment, signaling that Jack's attempts to sway them had failed. As the meeting concluded, Rachel felt a weight lift off her shoulders. They had successfully defended their position and solidified their relationships with key stakeholders. But even in this moment of triumph, Rachel knew the battle was far from over. Jack was still lurking, plotting his next move. With every setback he faced, Rachel anticipated his retaliation would become more desperate and dangerous. As she walked back to her office, Rachel felt an invigorating sense of determination. She was prepared for whatever lay ahead. Her team was united. Her investors were on board, and her commitment to her father's legacy had never been stronger. Jack might be a formidable opponent, but Rachel was ready to confront him head-on, armed with the resilience of her team and the clarity of her vision. The stage was set for a showdown that would determine not only the fate of the company, but also the legacy of all they had built together. Rachel steeled herself, ready to face the reckoning that lay ahead. The final confrontation. The atmosphere in the office had transformed into one of palpable tension as news of Jack's latest moves spread through the ranks. Rachel had fortified her company's defenses and garnered the loyalty of her employees, but she knew she couldn't let her guard down. Jack was relentless and resourceful, and the precarious game of corporate chess was far from over. Days after the investor meeting, Rachel received a call that would change everything. It was Mia, her trusted ally, whose voice trembled with urgency. "Rachel, I've just learned that Jack has set up a clandestine meeting with a few of our former employees who left during his campaign. He's promising them significant roles in his new venture, offering them a chance to undermine us from the inside." A chill coursed through Rachel's veins as she processed this new information. She had anticipated Jack would resort to dirty tactics, but this was more serious than she had imagined. The possibility of betrayal from former employees, some of whom had been with them for years, made her heart race with anxiety. "Do we know where and when this meeting is taking place?" Rachel asked, her mind racing with strategies and contingencies. "Not yet, but I'll find out," Maya replied, determination igniting in her tone. "We need to act fast. If he's trying to recruit them, he might be planning something big, and we can't let him gather strength." Rachel leaned back in her chair, her thoughts racing. Jack was not only attempting to weaken her position, he was trying to create a faction that could challenge her directly. This called for a preemptive strike. "Mia, let's prepare a counter-offensive. We need to reach out to our loyal employees, especially those who have left. We need to remind them of what we stand for and the impact they had on our company." After hanging up, Rachel set to work. She drafted a heartfelt message to her former employees, emphasizing their shared experiences and the values they had built together. She highlighted the direction the company was headed, expressing her commitment to innovation and collaboration. Rachel understood the importance of rekindling those connections, especially now when loyalty was critical. Mia worked tirelessly to track down the details of Jack's clandestine meeting. Within a day, she uncovered the location. A small cafe just outside the city. It was a neutral ground, one where Jack could charm and manipulate those he sought to recruit. Rachel's instincts flared. She knew she had to confront him directly, but not in a way that would escalate into chaos. Instead, she would wield her influence and the strength of her convictions. "Let's go to that cafe," Rachel told Mia, determination blazing in her eyes. "We need to be present and remind everyone of the truth, what we're fighting for. If we can get there first, we can gather the support we need." The next morning, Rachel and Mia arrived at the cafe, the air thick with anticipation. The establishment was a cozy, unassuming spot with a warm ambience and local artwork adorning the walls. As they settled into a corner table, Rachel scanned the room, looking for signs of Jack and his cohort. Within minutes, she spotted Jack entering the cafe, flanked by two former employees, both of whom Rachel recognized. They had once been valuable members of her team, their skills crucial to the company's success. But now, they wore expressions that hinted at doubt and uncertainty. Rachel turned to Mia, her resolve solidifying. "We need to create a scene, something that captures their attention without causing a spectacle. We want them to hear our message loud and clear." As Jack began his pitch, Rachel took a deep breath and stood up. "Jack," she called out, her voice firm yet composed. "I didn't expect to find you here." The trio turned, surprise evident on their faces. Jack's smirk faltered for a moment before he regained his composure. "Rachel, what a coincidence. I was just talking about the future of our industry," he replied, his tone dripping with feigned charm. Rachel stepped closer, her gaze steady. "It's interesting that you're here. Considering the last time we spoke, you were adamant about pursuing a different path. Are you really convinced that your new venture will succeed by poaching talent and spreading division?" The former employees exchanged glances, confusion flashing in their eyes. Rachel seized the opportunity, her heart racing as she continued. "You all know what we've built together, the integrity, the passion, the innovation. Are you truly willing to forsake that for promises that lack substance?" Jack's composure began to crack. "Rachel, you're being dramatic. I'm offering them a chance to be part of something groundbreaking. The old ways are dying, and it's time for a fresh start." Rachel shook her head, unwavering. "Is that what you call it? A fresh start built on deceit? You're leveraging their insecurities, exploiting their doubts to create a facade of opportunity. But the truth is, they have a choice: to stand with the company that values them or follow a mirage." At that moment, Mia joined Rachel's side, her presence a silent testament to their unity. "We're not going anywhere. This company has always been about collaboration, innovation, and community. We invite you all to be part of a future that embraces those values rather than tearing them down." The tension in the cafe thickened as patrons turned to listen, intrigued by the unfolding drama. The former employees' expressions began to shift, uncertainty replaced by contemplation. Jack's facade was cracking under the weight of Rachel's words, and she could sense the tide turning. "Rachel, you don't know what you're talking about," Jack shot back, desperation creeping into his voice. "I'm offering them freedom, a chance to break away from the old and embrace the new." "Freedom," Rachel countered, "or the illusion of freedom. You may think you're offering them something new, but the reality is that your path leads to chaos. You've shown your true colors, and it's not a vision worth following." As she spoke, the barista approached their table, drawn in by the heated exchange. "Excuse me, but I couldn't help but overhear. I used to work at Rachel's company, and I can tell you that the culture there is something special. It's not just about the bottom line. It's about the people, the mission, and the impact we make together. I wouldn't trade that for anything." Rachel felt a rush of hope as other patrons began to nod in agreement, supporting her stance. The tide was turning in her favor, and Jack could sense it. "This is ridiculous," Jack snapped, his tone growing aggressive. "You can't control people's choices, Rachel. They deserve to explore their options. But at what cost?" Rachel asked, her voice steady. What you're offering is an empty promise built on exploitation. They deserve to be part of something real, something that values their contributions and fosters their growth." Rachel turned to the former employees, their eyes reflecting uncertainty. "You have the power to choose your path. Will you stand with someone who has manipulated and betrayed for his gain, or will you join a community that champions your talent and vision?" Silence enveloped the cafe as her words resonated deeply. Slowly, one of the former employees stepped forward. "Rachel, you're right. I had doubts about the direction of the company after everything that happened, but the truth is, we built something great together. I don't want to be part of a plan that undermines that." The other former employee nodded, clearly moved. "I thought Jack offered something better, but I can see now that he's just trying to take what we built and twist it for his purposes. I choose to stand with you." Jack's expression shifted from arrogance to desperation, his facade crumbling. "You're making a mistake," he hissed, his voice laced with frustration. "I can take you further than she ever could." "No, you can't," Rachel replied calmly. "What you're offering is empty. We know what we stand for, and we're committed to making it work." As the realization settled in, Jack's anger boiled over. "You think this is over? You're making a grave mistake. You'll regret this." Rachel held her ground, a sense of calm washing over her. "No, Jack. The mistake was yours. You underestimated our resolve and our commitment to each other. This company stands for something, and we will fight for it." With that, she turned to the barista, who had been silently observing. "Thank you for your support. This is what community looks like. People standing together for a common cause." Jack's face turned a shade of crimson as he stormed out of the cafe, his plans unraveled before his eyes. The air felt lighter as he departed, and Rachel could sense a wave of relief wash over the remaining employees. They were ready to stand together, united against the forces that threatened to pull them apart. In the days that followed, the fallout from the cafe confrontation rippled through the company. Rachel's decisive action had resonated deeply, strengthening the loyalty of her team. News spread about Jack's failed attempts to undermine their unity, reinforcing their commitment to one another. Rachel scheduled follow-up meetings with her employees to discuss their vision and solicit feedback. She wanted them to feel empowered, to have a voice in the direction of the company. Their input would guide her as they navigated the uncertain landscape ahead. During one of these meetings, an employee raised a hand, his voice filled with enthusiasm. "Rachel, I think we should launch a campaign to share our story. We need to show the world what we stand for and why we're different from the competition." "I love that idea," Rachel replied, her excitement evident. "Let's showcase our commitment to innovation and community. We'll create a campaign that highlights our values, our people, and the incredible work we're doing together." Over the next few weeks, Rachel and her team collaborated to develop the campaign, pouring their hearts into every detail. They filmed testimonials from employees, showcasing their passion for the company and their dedication to its mission. The campaign was an authentic reflection of their values and aspirations. As the campaign launched, the response was overwhelmingly positive. Customers and industry leaders praised their dedication and authenticity. Rachel felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing they had turned a moment of adversity into an opportunity to unite and inspire. But even amid this success, Rachel remained vigilant. She understood that Jack wouldn't give up easily, and she prepared herself for any future confrontations. She fortified her alliances, ensuring that her team was equipped to tackle whatever challenges lay ahead. One evening, as Rachel sat in her office, reflecting on their recent triumphs, Mia entered, her expression serious. "Rachel, we've received some intel that Jack is attempting to rally investors for a hostile takeover. We need to strategize and prepare for this possibility." Rachel's heart sank as she processed this news. Jack's tenacity was alarming, but she knew they had to remain strong. "Let's gather the leadership team and brainstorm our response. We've overcome so much already. We can't let him derail our progress." As the leadership team assembled, Rachel laid out her vision for combating Jack's threats, They discussed potential strategies, emphasizing transparency and communication with their investors. Rachel wanted to ensure everyone knew the truth about their company and the commitment they had to their mission. The meeting concluded with renewed energy and a sense of purpose. Rachel had transformed from a victim of circumstance to a powerful leader, ready to face any challenge that came her way. As the weeks unfolded, she remained committed to building an inclusive and innovative culture, ensuring that her company continued to thrive despite external pressures. One evening, while Rachel was going through the company's finances, she stumbled upon an alarming discovery. It appeared that Jack had secretly siphoned off funds from their shared accounts before their marriage ended. Rachel's heart raced as she processed this revelation. This was not just a corporate rivalry, it was personal betrayal. The thought of confronting Jack filled her with dread, but she knew she had to act swiftly to protect what was rightfully hers and hold Jack accountable for his actions. With Mia by her side, they gathered evidence and formulated a plan to address the situation. The next day, Rachel and Mia arranged a meeting with their attorney to discuss their options. As they presented their findings, the attorney's expression shifted from concern to determination. "We can pursue legal action against Jack for this. It's clear he was acting in bad faith, and we have the evidence to support your claims." With a heavy heart but a fierce determination, Rachel made the decision to proceed with the legal process. She knew it would be a long and arduous journey, but she was prepared to fight for her company and the legacy her father had built. As the case unfolded, Rachel found herself reflecting on the importance of resilience, integrity, and the power of unity. She had transformed from a naive young woman into a formidable leader, fighting not only for her inheritance, but for the values that defined her company. Through each challenge, she had emerged stronger, her convictions unwavering. Rachel was ready for whatever lay ahead, knowing that the true measure of success lay not in material wealth, but in the impact she had on the lives of those around her. And as the sun set over the city, Rachel looked out over the skyline, filled with hope for the future. She knew that the path ahead would be filled with obstacles, but she had the strength of her convictions and the loyalty of her team to guide her through the darkest times. This was her fight, and she was prepared to win it.